And just like that, we are already back with another episode of Up in the Blue Seats, your favorite Rangers podcast from the New York Post. It's an emergency podcast with the gang, Mollie Walker, Brian Boyle, and Larry Brooks. You guys know the deal. So just after 2 weeks after dismissing Peter Laviolette and just 4 days after Mike Sullivan and the Pittsburgh Penguins split up, Mike Sullivan was named the 38th head coach in Rangers history, first thing on a beautiful Friday morning in New York. I mean, I think from the moment Sullivan became available, everybody knew he would become the top candidate for the Rangers and probably a top candidate for a lot of coaches, a lot of teams that were in need of a new head coach. But the Rangers really wasted absolutely no time. And they probably had to because Sullivan naturally drew a lot of interest right off the bat with 7 other teams in need of a head coach. I mean, Brian, you played under Sullivan both with the Rangers when he was an assistant from 2009 to 2013 and then with the Penguins in 2021-22. What do you think about this hire for the Rangers?
It's a home run. Look, when he was relieved or however the exit was in Pittsburgh, I just thought to myself, Pittsburgh, they're crazy. I don't know what they're doing. There's not many of these in the world that can do what Mike Sullivan can do. It's funny because there was rumors about another guy I'd put in that level this week with John Cooper. He put cold water on that today at his press conference. But no, Sully's he's coached for a long time. He's a head coach. A lot of years ago, he's learned a lot of different things, and his approach is the right one. This was a guy that for sure would have been offered in other places as well. And as far as I understand it, this was something that I think Chris Drury probably was looking into a few years ago prior to the Gallant hire. And he just wasn't available. So timing lined up this time. It's a great get for the Rangers. He's a great person, a great man, and I'm sure has a plan and has already probably communicated with several of his players that are on the roster right now already, just to try and dive into this thing. That's just the type of work ethic he has. I'm excited for him, the person. He's meant a lot to me in my career, and I know that's probably a great job to get for him.
Larry, reaction?
I think under a different circumstance, I would have preferred the Rangers going younger. With a fresh vision, maybe. But I also understand the reality of the situation here with Chris Drury. He received a contract extension last week, but it's not a Glenn Sather job for life, type of extension. And in fact, I've been told there's a 2-year extension. And so, Chris Drury's job security is on the line here. He's not going to be making another coaching hire in 2 years. That's reality. And so this became inevitable the moment that Sullivan went on the market. I was told very early that there were going to be other issues with Boston, which I'm sure would have been a front runner in other circumstances. Not particularly great feelings for the ownership there. He didn't want. I was told he was not going to Philadelphia. So this was inevitable. The Rangers were not going to be outbid. They're going to make him the highest paid coach in history. And it gives them credibility. Now, I understand, another recyclable, but it's really not the same. Gerard Gallant had a couple of previous stops where he lasted 2 or 3 years. Peter Laviolette has had more success than Gallant, but he had been 5 different places, and a couple of them he was there for a couple of 2 or 3 years, and Sullivan has been in one place for 10 years. So it's not like, we're just recycling. He's been in one place for 10 years. Maybe the message, got a little bit stale as when the players are listening to the same voice over and over and over. But I was also told that the GM, Kyle Dubas, wants to put his own stamp on the organization. And, you do that by hiring your own coach.
Mhm.
Again, I get it. He is a capable head coach. Uh, he has not only dealt with, but has won with egos, managing egos. People think, I started with Al Arbor, the Islanders, and people thought, how great it was to have Bossy and Trache and Potvin and Bourne and all these guys. And of course it's great, but there are egos bouncing off the walls in that room, and you have to be able to manage egos. I mean, it's a great job to have it, but you have to be able to have the capability of managing those egos. And we know, Sullivan has succeeded with marquee players. And so if there's an issue in the Ranger room, and I think there has been for a bit, about a team having a strange sense of entitlement without having a Stanley Cup in their belt. I'm sure that Sullivan will be able to deal with whatever personality issues and whatever egos and whatever slights the Rangers think are perceived in the Ranger room. And the other thing, and I don't want to have this run-on sentence, but the relationship to me between Drury and Sullivan is critical here. Again, Chris is still fairly inexperienced, and he's on his third coach. And the first two, he had really no prior relationships with at all. I don't, I think he barely knew Gallant. And
Mhm.
while there was more of a relationship with Laviolette from Team USA or going through the US system, they weren't close. Drury and Laviolette, I think, have a relationship that goes back to the 90s when Drury went to BU 4 years after Sullivan. And so it is vital for the Rangers. I think it's vital for every team, but certainly for the Rangers coming off last season, for the general manager and coach to be in lockstep, to present a united front, that there's no, there's no questioning the relationship. And I think it'd be very valuable for Drury to have a coach who he will be able to trust 100%.
I put a lot of stock in the timeline that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, just how quickly it all came together and how Chris Drury went from talking about having this wide open search and, going into it without preset dispositions to the moment that Sullivan became available. It felt like complete tunnel vision, switch, turn, that's our guy, we're gunning toward our guy. And I think that should tell you just how highly the organization values Mike Sullivan coming into this job. Brian, I wanted to ask you just how he compares to other head coaches that you've had in the past.
I've been pretty lucky. I think it's at the times in my career when I had certain coaches, for the most part, there was, that's not always the case, but it was, when I came to New York and I had Torts, that was the best thing for me. But I had Torts and Sully, and those were the only two guys on the bench. So I leaned on Sully a lot as an assistant coach. He was he certainly wasn't confused for the head coach, but he had a lot of the head coach responsibilities. And since then, and then, 4 years with him then, and then, having the bulk of my career and then back with him at the very last year, just seeing how, all the positives and all the things I really loved, he still had all those qualities. I was actually, Larry and I were chatting earlier this week about certain things. I just think the way he handles a 5-game win streak and the way he handles you win 2 out of your last 8, the meeting, the day between games, the meeting in the morning, the meeting right before the game, it's all the same approach. So the way he communicates, this is the objective today. This is what we're going to do. Here's some video. This is us where we're not doing a good job. Doesn't ever really throw a guy under the bus. We're all watching the giant screen. We all know who made the mistake. Doesn't overly praise too many guys, but mixes in enough clips where you can sort of feel good about yourself. Like, he has it perfect. And the peaks and valleys they're minimized when you have that sort of approach. I think his training camp's extremely difficult, but for all the right reasons. It's a competitive atmosphere. It's not just skate you into the ground till you want to retire. And he's just so approachable. And maybe that's just because, I mean, I've known him a while and he was so helpful to me at a young age, but most of the guys, even the younger players in Pittsburgh, had no issues. He was around the room, in the meal room, on practice days. All business, but also not like, he's not a stiff. He's a funny guy. He's a charismatic guy when he has to be, but when it's time to work, it's really impressive how he handled everything he did. I was just, we're back here, we're going to work again, and basically, like, if you're not willing to compete, if you're not willing to push yourself to get better, and he had a pretty good bus driver and players in Sid for the last 10 years.
Right.
He had to follow in line.
Yeah.
He's going to give you the game plan. He'll map it out. It's up to the players to do it. And I really think, like I said, he's probably contacted a few of them, but I really hope that they're taking this offseason pretty seriously. They're taking a lot of ownership for what happened this year, because regardless of what they said in the postseason scrums and the breakup day, it's on them more than anything else. And that is a really disappointing season that they just had. Now you have this bona fide, awesome hockey coach coming in. It's your third one. It's on you guys, and he'll push them. And you better make a good impression, because, like Larry said, the relationship between Drury and Sullivan is tight. And if it's not working, I don't think there'll be any kind of arguments as to whether they need to ship anybody out or whatnot. Now, then that being said as well, he'll have a fast-paced team that wants to have puck pursuit, but defending's non-negotiable. He's going to make you defend. He's got some good goaltending, which he hasn't quite had the last few years in Pittsburgh. And look, it's a great get. He'll fill out his staff. I'm sure that won't be too difficult, depending on who's available and who wants to come. But there won't be the chaos and anger amongst management or disconnect or arguments. It'll be.
Oh, you know what, too?
Simpatico. Everything will be.
Simpatico.
We're on the same page here.
Kumbaya.
Yeah.
Well, you know what too. It's like, was it like last week where people were saying no one's going to want to take this job, right? Like, no one's going to come into New York. Yeah, who wants this job? One of the things that struck me when I was looking back over his 10 years in Pittsburgh and just checking out, game management kind of things, is that, the Rangers, certainly starting with Gallant, when he moved Kreider into the penalty killing role, which was brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. But the Rangers have leaned on their top forwards for everything. They're piling minutes on them 5-on-5. And it's, not only Gallant, Laviolette, as his tenure evolved. There was, Zibanejad and Kreider killing, Trocheck killing, Ryan Strome killing. I mean, their top guys were on both specialty teams, and because neither Gallant nor Laviolette was particularly a four-line zealot, the minutes just piled up and piled up. Interesting to me is that Sullivan in Pittsburgh, penalty killers were the forwards on the penalty kill were bottom six guys, role players. And that, that's been his history throughout his career in Pittsburgh. So I would assume that he will bring that same philosophy to the Rangers, which I think is great, because the Rangers leaders, their forwards are 31, 32, 33 years old. You cannot, and Brian and I were talking about this earlier. Vincent Trocheck is a different player at 17 or 18 minutes a night than he is at 22. And so if there is a more egalitarian division of responsibility, and the minutes are now going between like an average of 11 to 19 instead of 6.5 to 22.
And 22, yeah.
I mean, that can only benefit this team, both because I think the bottom six guys need to have more responsibility, and because the older guys who are carrying the baton cannot do it over an 82 game season. They can't. So I'm really so I'm excited about seeing that philosophy being attached to the Rangers.
Comes with personnel, though. He does a good job of empowering, right, and making you feel like you're an important piece of the puzzle. And even if you don't play every game, when you're in, he'll have the conversation with you. When he takes you out, he'll have the conversation with you. So there'll be no lack of communication as where you stand, what he wants from you, and he'll empower you to do things. His biggest thing is we're trying to put our players in positions for success. That's what you'll hear him say it over and over, because he wants guys. He takes what he thinks their strengths are and he puts them in those roles. Now, this team, how it's constructed, exactly what he would want in terms of those roles and how to play, that remains to be seen. But it's the beginning of May, and he could get together, try to shape his roster how he wants.
Well, you know what? You have to coach the roster that you're given, not the roster that you wish for.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if and again, we haven't really dipped our toes into the off season yet. Even dipped our toes into the shallow end of the off season yet. So we don't know what's coming. But but the early hire also allows him to be part of the, have a major role in shaping the personnel too. Again,
Right.
I think this is a partnership. Listen, coaches coach and managers manage. The general manager does not tell the coach who to play. That can't work. And there are so many misconceptions about that. That and it's not limited to Drury, Lamoriello, or whatever. No, the GM told the coach to. No, that doesn't happen in the NHL. The coach makes the lineup.
I do know an example of where it did.
Brian's like,
and it was such a ridiculous ask for a coach to play a player in a certain position that he wouldn't do it. He knew he was getting fired too. And he's like, I'm not going out like this, playing this guy there. That's all to remember. And we had to fire him. You're right though, Larry. Rarely, if ever, does it happen. But I don't think
because it gives the coach an out. It gives the coach a crutch. So, well, this wasn't my lineup. I didn't want to play in there. Don't blame me. But again, I do think that this will be a partnership where if Chris Drury acquires a player, the coach will understand the role that the jury or the management envisioned for this player. And it's like, you're not acquiring a player and then having the coach say, well, I'm not using him. I'm not using him. I think this will be a collaborative effort, though, division of responsibilities will have to be in place, obviously.
Speaking of the rest of the coaching staff, somebody who will not be a part of it is ex-head coach John Tortorella, who was in the middle of a lot of speculation that he would be rejoining the organization in some capacity. ESPN and a couple of other people reported that it was a strong possibility, but now that is apparently they had a conversation according to ESPN, but he will definitely not be joining Sullivan's staff, and I'm sure Larry is super disappointed in that.
Well, I just don't really understand. What was he going to be, the good cop? Really? Was he going to run the power play? Seriously, I wouldn't. I wouldn't exclude the possibility that he would join the organizations in some capacity in the front office. I'm not sure. Because honestly, early in the season, it was obvious, maybe to everyone, maybe except for Tortorella, but it was obvious that that was the trajectory that he was on in Philadelphia. That this was going to be his last year coaching, because management really had a great affection for him, he was going to slide into the front office, and he would have had a job for life in the Flyers front office. But he imploded at the end of the year, and that made it impossible. So,
Imploded.
He
What did he say? I have no interest in learning how to coach with where we're at. The team.
He wants to coach. He wants to coach.
So maybe if he doesn't
learn how to coach, he said is what he said about.
Maybe if he doesn't get a job, he winds up joining the Rangers organization.
That would be true.
But honestly, I just didn't see what role was he going to have? I don't know.
He said, I heard he enjoyed.
That's so funny.
I heard he had enjoyed his role at the Four Nations.
Four Nations, right?
But I know that because I know he wants to coach still. So it was interesting. And you're right. It was. It's hard to picture because it's like the same two guys, and I just remember him yelling at Sully to get away from him, go back down the other side, just having that whole dynamic flip on its head. I'd watch every game, and I'd have an ISO cam on the bench because I just would want to. But we don't get to see the bench much anymore.
Well, it'll be interesting to me if who the
staff will be.
Who the staff? How they fill out.
I really liked Mike Bellucci. He's been around. He left his spot in the OHL. He was with Plymouth. He was great, and he had the penalty kill in Pittsburgh. When I was there, we went from, I think we were like 28th, and then we went to 3rd. Not a big deal when we got there. So, but he was great, just personable guy, awesome. But there's a lot of guys, a lot of good, smart people. Game changes every year. There's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Same thing wins every year, incidentally. But
I enjoyed covering him at Four Nations. That's my 2 cents. I thought he was a good quote. And I know a lot of people focus in on the Kyle Connor out for Chris Kreider switch at Four Nations, but I enjoyed, working with him at Four Nations. So I felt like he said what he meant what he said, believes in what he says type of guy. And that's really all you could really want, I think. All right.
And I also think, again, the fact that they got this done so quickly and so cleanly is very important for this. It's important to learn from last year, but put it in the past and start. And I think, there's no uncertainty now about who's running the show. This is going to be his show. Drury and Sullivan, it's their show. And so now the organization starts on next season. Next season has begun. 2025, 26 has begun.
Well, it's helpful the 5 years and all the money, but I think he's earned it. But that also puts you in a hostile environment with, that's why you get that money in this hostile environment. It's not easy. You got people saying this is the wrong hire already. That he's not going to read any of that crap, but it's like it's not easy. And here's your security blanket. Here are your years. Here's your money, and you've earned it. You're a 2-time Cup winner, and you've been there for that long. But there's pros and cons.
Yeah, and I think too, players. I think players would be smart enough not to question Mike Sullivan, right off the bat too. I don't think they're not firing Mike Sullivan. This group is not firing Mike Sullivan.
Oh God, I can't even think that far ahead, Larry. Let's please. He just got here.
Didn't shock the Penguins did, but
didn't
I was too, honestly. I really was. Especially just knowing.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it doesn't. Why would they be considering how fast he would be hired? But I was very surprised that they.
No, again, I think it's because Kyle Dubas wants to put his on the Pittsburgh organization.
Yeah, you're right, and it's So let's get a.
It's
John-
a, you know what? You know
I
what's
don't even want to start with that guy.
You know what's so
Gross.
interesting?
There was also reports that they didn't see eye to eye on the timeline back to success. Was also a narrative that was being thrown out there.
Well, one of the things too is that's interesting, and this is far afield from the Rangers, but remember a couple of years ago how the common wisdom was that the Maple Leafs had made a mistake by retaining Brendan Shanahan and allowed Kyle Dubas to go, and now you take a look and it's.
I want to know who said that.
What?
Brian.
I know. Based on what? The Greyhounds?
That's right.
What are we talking about here? The team he built. That's all right. Now they've won 2 series, thank God, because they had to change everything, get a new coach, and fix the D. What are we talking about with this guy? Rangers fans should love him. He just got a hell of a coach because. I don't know why. I don't know why he's not in Pittsburgh still. So I don't want to say anything that I'm not. I'm done. That's it.
You're done. All right. That's fine. All right. Let's segue to some house cleaning stuff real quick. Parsonen was extended today as well. 2 years with an average annual value of $1.25 million. And Joe Micheletti is joining Sam Rosen in retirement.
Yep.
Very sad news for all of us who absolutely love seeing Joe and Sam around the rink. Losing one of them was going to be gut-wrenching. Losing both at the same time is an absolute travesty, but we will push through, and we wish them all the best in retirement. Seriously, 2 of the best people you will ever meet in the sport of hockey. So we wish them well. Sure.
Can I say one thing about Joe?
Yeah.
Joe was always great. Joe was great when I played. I got into broadcasting. Joe reached out to me and spoke to me at length on what to do and how specifically how Ranger games work, even after I broadcasted a little bit. He didn't say a word all year.
Yeah.
Knowing the selflessness that he has, and obviously he was here half the time as Sam was, but he did it for a long time. He played, he coached, won a couple national titles. I was bummed out for one because I just love seeing Joe around, but 2, I'm so impressed with the class that guy has, and I'm thankful for his friendship and how much he's helped me along the way. I just wanted to make sure I could say that Joe's the man. He's an unbelievable human being, and I wish him well as well. And I want to thank him for all the help he's given me.
I second that. It would, you come to the rink every day. It becomes a grind, but it never seemed like it was a grind for Joe. And you would look forward to going to the rink and sitting in the stand in the corner and chatting with Joe. I mean, he,
Right.
I think Brian's feelings or perceptions are
Universal.
Are unanimous. Are universal.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a wrap. I'm sure we will have another one of these emergency episodes very soon, probably, with how much time we have until the start of next season. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in as always. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Comment down below. Let us know what you think about the Mike Sullivan hire. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you indifferent? Let us know. And we'll talk again next week. Maybe not. Maybe the week after. We'll see.